Hi guys, Jade Morris here. I'm with UFC lightweight Jim Miller. Jim, first of all, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Now, you're set to face Michael Chiesa at UFC Fight Night 80 next week. A lot of fans have actually, they've been really excited for this fight because they think it's a fantastic matchup. What are your thoughts on this fight?
I think it's a good matchup. You know, we're both aggressive grapplers. We both try to leave every ounce of energy we have inside the cage. It should be a good night, and I like tests. I like hard fights, and that's what I'm looking for out of it.
And what do you think of him as a fighter? Do you see any strengths at all that you think could give you any problems in the cage?
He's pretty lanky for a lightweight. He's 6'1". So it's not the first guy that's that tall. And has 5 inches of height on me that I fought, but it poses a problem. And then he's a very good grappler. So I have to fight smart, and I have to fight to my strengths, and I know I'm gonna get the win, and in a fashion that satisfies me, and that'd be dominantly. But yeah, he's a tough guy, and I took this camp very seriously, so I'm looking to fight the best Chiesa there is, and to beat him.
Now, you were coming off a 2-fight loss streak, and then obviously you went in and fought Danny Castillo.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you said afterwards you were actually disappointed in that fight. Can you tell us why you were disappointed?
In the Castillo fight?
In the Castillo fight, you said you were disappointed coming out. You weren't happy with the performance. Can you tell us why?
It wasn't. It was kind of I was misinterpreted a little bit. In that interview, I was disappointed in my April fight against Beneil Dariush. Very disappointed in that one. Just didn't show up to fight. The Castillo fight, I would have liked it to be, action packed, and it was kind of just the way that game plans worked out and styles planned out. Kind of worked out, and it wasn't as high intensity of a fight as I like. My goal in every fight is to go out and the first mistake my opponent makes to put him away. I'm not in it to be in fight of the night. I'm not in it to be, in these grueling 3-round or 5-round fights. I want domination. So when I don't get that, I'm not satisfied. So I was happy to get the win, and I was happy to beat somebody who's a guy that I have a lot of respect for. But I would have chose a different manner in doing so.
So next week we can see a really exciting fight coming up.
That's the plan.
And how's obviously your training for this fight been? How's your weight cut been as well?
Training's been going for the last year and a half. I've been training exclusively at my place, Miller Brothers MMA. I've got a great group of guys, a lot of guys that used to train with me at the other places we trained at, and so I've got experienced fighters, and then I've got some really talented homegrown guys that we pulled out locally and are building up, and could be, So my training's been going well. It's really about feeling good. Getting in good sessions, learning, and just becoming a better martial artist, a better fighter in every session. My weight has been actually fantastic. I had a terrible cut for that April fight. Worst cut of my career. Feel comfortable, even fight day. It took a lot more work to get the weight off for some reason. I did everything the same as I had done in, the 18 prior fights that I had in the UFC. and it just kind of stuck on me. So I kind of made that commitment after that fight to try to bring my weight down a couple pounds, and to be walking around in the mid 160s, which I have, comfortably. Usually that's part of. I don't see that until I start cutting weight, and really working on the water. So, my last fight, I only had 5 weeks, so I really didn't have the opportunity to bring it down a little bit sooner. I should have stayed on my diet a little bit better after the April fight, but that's here nor there. So, so I've really, I focused on my diet. I focused on doing the right things, more of the right things, and bringing the weight down. That I'm lighter than I've been this close to the fight, or this far out from the fight rather, in probably 7 years. So it's I'm confident this is going to be a relatively easy weight cut for me, and I can feel it. I feel lighter. I feel faster, and I think that's something that's going to help me get the victory next week.
It's funny that you say that, actually, because I know that Chris Weidman, he's actually just said the same thing. Like, rather than leaving it towards the end this time, he's in his fight camp now. He's actually dropping down to the weight now, and he's fighting in his fight camp at that weight. Do you think that has a big impact? Because obviously, I mean, sometimes you see fighters and they do such a dramatic weight cut just before the fight. Do you think that can have like a real impact once you get into the cage, and it's like a big part of fighting?
It can, it definitely can. I've I've had good cuts and bad cuts, and a majority of the time in my UFC career, I've come in at around 171, 172 pounds when I show up in fight week, and most of the time it comes off like clockwork. It's not fun. It's not the exciting part that you look forward to. It gets very, you get kind of drawn out and tired, and a little fought down towards weight. But the trade off is being a little bit bigger, and also kind of you want to fight at that weight that you walk around at, is really the thing. So the tough part about coming in lighter is that you might overdo it after weigh-ins, and then be walking around with an extra, 5, 8, maybe 10 pounds inside you, sloshing around your belly, and that can also have a negative effect. So there's a lot that goes into it, and it's kind of different for everybody, and it changes. It changes too. It's changed for me. I don't want to be cutting 15 pounds anymore. It's like I said, it's not fun, and so I kind of bounce between, do I go up? Do I try to take some mass off and make my life a little bit easier? And I chose that route first. I definitely wouldn't resist going up to 170s. The problem is I can't get any taller, and a majority of those guys are around 6 foot, so that makes it a little difficult. But yeah, this is the decision that I made right now, and we'll see how it works out.
So it's something you think you might look at after this fight, then you'll sit back down and have a think of what you're going to do.
Yeah, I think that I think it's going to work out well for me. Like I said, I feel good. I feel fast. And that's one of my best weapons is my speed and my scrambling ability. So I'm looking to kind of show off, and I think that coming in a little bit lighter, coming in a little bit leaner, and off a couple pounds of muscle wasn't a bad thing. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Now, I noticed a post you posted about 2 weeks ago on Twitter to your fans saying that you made your MMA debut 10 years ago to that day. What advice do you have for, all these up and coming MMA fighters now? You're a veteran in the sport. What advice would you give anyone coming into the sport now?
Um, it's, you have to get in, and you really only have a few years. Fighting for 10 years it's a long time, and it wears on you. Um, and I feel like I've gotten better. I know I've become a better athlete. I know I've um, gotten better technically, but there might have been a spot a couple of years ago where I was physically in my prime. I was faster. My reflexes were better. But who knows? I still think that I have the best is yet to come. But I've also had 32 fights, and a majority of them have been against guys in the UFC and the top competition. And I spent the first 7 years of my career basically training in a fight camp. There was no fight camp. It was just training, and I'd have so that definitely kind of wore on me a little bit. So I would tell people just to, these new fighters, just fight, just come in and get them in. Don't rush your entry into fighting, but try not to spread it out as much. It's you want to be active and take the best fights you can get, because the best opponents are going to bring out the best in you. And I often see guys that are very picky on matchups when they only have 2 or 3 fights, and some people that might be a good thing. Others, I fought everybody. I fought everybody I could, and it was basically just that opportunity to get that experience. And by the time I was in the UFC, I had a dozen fights, and half of them were title fights, and I was fighting in big fights, so it wasn't a big when I came into the UFC. So I'd just say just reach out and grab it, and just go after it as aggressively as you can.
Speaking of young up and coming fighters, obviously we've got all these 21-year-olds coming through now. We've got Paige Van Zandt, she's headlining your card against Rose Namajunas. Now, what are your thoughts on that fight? First of all, who do you think's going to win? And also, what do you think about that division? People like Joe Rogan, they've mentioned it's just not a thick enough division yet. Like people like Paige, she's only had a few fights in the UFC, and already, she might be lined up next for the title if she wins. Speaking of you saying, obviously you want to take these fights. Do you think it'd be too soon for someone like Paige to be going in for a title fight now? Joe Rogan said he'd like to see her develop a bit more first, and then get the title shot. What are your thoughts on that? As obviously, you have had so many fights in the UFC.
I think that she could use a couple more fights, build a little more experience. She's very talented. I think she's going to get the win, personally. But yeah, it is tough, because you go from maybe having a little bit of a background in one thing or another, and you fight times, and all of a sudden you're on the biggest stage in the world. It felt like it happened pretty quickly for myself. I wrestled, and then I fought for 3 years, and then I was in the UFC. So it was, things kind of snowballed rather. But it doesn't seem like it didn't happen as quickly for me as it has happened for some of these other fighters. It's going to be a test. It's going to be a test for him to get into these big fights, that have all this pressure to kind of deal with all those other things that come with being in big fights, and being a competitor. So it'll be interesting, but it is a little crazy when you see ranked fighters that only have a handful of fights. But that's the way the division is, and they're building, and there's some very, very talented, young women in there. So um, it's definitely interesting to watch.
Now, speaking of big fights, we've got another huge fight next weekend. We have Jose Aldo versus Conor McGregor for UFC 194. Everyone's been asked what their predictions, so we're going to ask you as well. What is your prediction for that fight?
I think Jose is going to beat him by decision. Terrible picking fights though. So Connor has a great a great cross. He throws it very long, and I think that can be really his weapon that he should be focusing on using against Jose. But Jose, he's a freak. The guy he's so fast. He's what he's done to the other guys that are the highest level. It's been complete that, and I think he's gonna dominate Connor. Honestly, I think he's gonna pepper him up. Connor might have a round, maybe two, but I think that Jose's gonna outwork him. He's gonna beat up his legs, and I think he's gonna get the W.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us. We look forward to your fight next week, December 10th. Thank you again.